Hello students, this is me, your teacher Preeti Lal. I'll be taking science. And students, last time in the last class we did chemical reactions and equations, in which we saw certain topics. What were those topics? Like what is a chemical reaction? What is a chemical equation? We saw how we balance a chemical equation. Then we saw different types of chemical reactions like the combination reaction, the decomposition reaction, then single displacement reaction, double displacement reaction. We saw redox reaction, we saw precipitation reaction, neutralization reactions, so on. Now students, I just hope that you all understood the chapter chemical reactions and equations. Now let's proceed to the next chapter. That is the first chapter of biology of class 10th, that is life process. Now to start with, all the living organisms including the plants, animals and human beings etc., they are all alive, they are all living things. Now my first question to you is like what criteria are you going to use to find out whether a particular thing is living or not living? And the best way could be like its movement. All the living organism moves by themselves without any external help. Now for instance, if you see in the case of animals moves very fast and their movement is observable. We can observe it. Whereas when you see the plants, the movement shown in the case of plants actually, it's quite slow. And that too, it can be observed with great difficulty. If you see the animals, they move from one place to another and they use their different body parts to bring about that movement. What in the case of plants? The plants actually cannot move from one place to another. Actually, they remain fixed to the ground. But they too show movement. They show movement with the help of their body parts like the stem, their roots, their leaves, their flowers, etc. Plants respond to various stimuli like sunlight. Then they respond to water. They respond to gravity. They respond to touch. You will always see that the shoot of the plant always bends towards the source of light. Then even the water, like the root of the plant always go deep into the ground in search of water. Similarly, the root of the plant always goes down in the direction of gravity. The best example, this is a simple example, like you must have seen Mimosa pudica. It's a touch me not plant. Touch me not plant. If you see a touch me not plant, like if you go and touch the leaf of the touch me not plant, you will see that the leaves of the touch me not plants folds. Here the touch me not plant is responding to the stimulus touch. So here also you can see the plant is undergoing movement. Though this movement is for a short time, for which can be, this particular movement can be seen. So every living organism on the earth shows movement, and these movements take place by themselves without taking any external help. Students, about these stimulus, sunlight, water, gravity, etc., you are going to learn in the next chapter, control and coordination. This is known as phototropism, means the movement of the plant towards the source of light. Then this is hydrotropism, geotropism, you have thigmotropism, that we are going to see in the next chapter, control and coordination. Now, what is life process? Life process. Every living organism carry out various activities to keep themselves alive, and all these activities performed by the living organism to maintain their life on earth is called life processes. Once again I repeat, what is life process? Life process, all the living organism carry out basic functions to keep themselves alive, and those functions are known as life processes. Some of the basic life processes which are common to all the living organisms are, one is nutrition, then you have respiration, you have reproduction, transportation, control and coordination, growth, excretion. Today we are going to focus upon nutrition. We are going to focus upon nutrition. Now students, I told you all the living organism have to, all the living organism carry out basic activities, and those activities are known as life processes. For these activities to be carried, all living organisms require food. Food is needed by the living organisms to carry out various life activities. The food actually acts as a fuel here. Food acts as a fuel and it gives energy to the organism to carry out basic activities. Now students, my question is, like when you do some physical work, when you play, when you run, when you swim, and suppose the laborers, they do some laborious work, they need tremendous amount of energy, and this energy is supplied by the food they eat. But my question is, like if suppose you are sleeping, or you are watching television, or you are simply lying on the sofa, do you require energy? The answer is yes, we do require energy even when we are sleeping, because all the biological activities are taking place inside our body even when we are at rest, and those biological activities require energy, and those energy is actually obtained from the food we eat. Now, what is nutrition? What is nutrition? The entire process of taking in food by a living organism is called as nutrition. What is nutrition? The entire process of taking in food by a living organism is called as nutrition. The type of nutrition depends upon the complexity of organism. Now, there are different types of, or the different methods adopted by the animals to procure food. So, the modes of nutrition can be, first is autotrophic. What is autotrophic mode of nutrition? A type of nutrition in which the green plants prepare their own food in the presence of sunlight using simple inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, you have water, you have minerals, you have chlorophyll that is present in the leaves. So, the organisms which prepare their own food in the presence of sunlight utilizing carbon dioxide, water, minerals and chlorophyll is autotrophic mode of nutrition, and the organisms which produce the food by this means are known as autotrophs. All the green plants are known as autotrophs. I'll just show you a slide. Just go through the slide. See the slide. The preparation of organic food by the green plants from inorganic substances is called autotrophic nutrition. Green plants are called autotrophs just because they prepare their own food. Now we come to heterotrophic mode of nutrition. Now students, what is heterotrophic nutrition? Just the opposite of autotrophic nutrition. Now students, let's see the other mode of nutrition, that is heterotrophic nutrition. Students, autotrophic nutrition, you saw that the green plants prepared their own food. They don't depend upon any other organism. Just vice versa, it is heterotrophic nutrition. Heterotrophic mode of nutrition is a type of nutrition in which an organism cannot prepare its food, but it depends upon other organisms directly or indirectly. For instance, all the heterotrophs depends directly or indirectly on the autotrophs for their food. All the animals, including the human beings, are heterotrophs. They show heterotrophic mode of nutrition. Similarly, even the bacteria and the fungi are also heterotrophs. Just see the picture of the heterotrophs here. Animals that depend upon other organisms for their food are called heterotrophs, and this type of nutrition is called heterotrophic nutrition. Now students, heterotrophic mode of nutrition can further be divided into two more types. One is parasitic mode of nutrition. This word is quite familiar. You must have heard about a parasite. What is a parasite actually? A parasite is an organism which derives its food from the other living organisms without killing it. So a parasitic mode of nutrition is a type of nutrition in which one organism derives food from the other living organism without killing it. Parasites can be further divided into two. One is ectoparasite and the other one is endoparasite. Now when I am talking about parasite, let me give you two main terms actually. A parasite is an organism which derives its food from the other living organism. That organism which derives food from the other living organism is called parasite, whereas the organism from which the food is derived is called as a host. In a parasitic mode of nutrition, it's only the parasite which is benefited, but there is no benefit for the host. Host actually is always harmed in a parasitic mode of nutrition. When I'm talking about the ectoparasite and endoparasite, let me tell you what is an ectoparasite. A parasite which is found on the surface, on the body of the host is called ectoparasite. Examples can be ticks, lice. These are ectoparasites. When I talk about endoparasites are those parasites which live inside the body of the host. Example, roundworm. You have studied about roundworm in class 9. Roundworm is actually a worm which is found in the intestine of the human being. These roundworms are actually the parasite. They actually survive in the intestine of the infected man, that is the host, and derives nutrition from it. In this type of interaction, only the worm that is inside the host body is benefited. In no way the human being, the infected host, is benefited. There are many more examples of parasite, as in the case of plants also you have cuscuta, that is amarbel, and even in the case of animals also you have many parasites. Those belongs to the group of fungi and bacteria. Then we come to the next type of heterotrophic mode of nutrition, that is saprotrophic nutrition. Saprotrophic mode of nutrition, or you can say just saprophytes. What is saprophytic mode of nutrition? Saprophytic mode of nutrition is a type of nutrition in which a living organism derives nutrition from the dead decaying matter that is present in the dead bodies of the plants, animals, or even it can be the rotten bread. For example, fungi you can see you have yeast, mold, mushrooms. These are all saprophytes. So they derive nutrients from the dead decaying matter. Now saprophytes, when I talk about, what exactly a saprophyte do? This saprophyte actually breaks down the complex organic matter present in the dead decaying matter of plants and animals into simpler compounds, and that too outside their body, and then it absorbs it. So what exactly I want to say is that digestion actually takes place outside the body of the saprophytes, and then the absorption takes place inside the body of the saprophyte. So these are the different types of nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition we saw, heterotrophic nutrition we saw, under heterotrophic nutrition we saw parasitic mode of nutrition, we saw saprophytic mode of nutrition. Just see the slide, students. This is for the parasitic mode of nutrition. You have the cuscuta, you have orchids, you have ticks, lice, leeches, tapeworms, etc. Example of ectoparasite, I said leeches and ticks. Ticks quite familiar. You have lice on your hair, isn't it? So those are ectoparasite. Even the animals' bodies have ticks. Those are ectoparasite. But the tapeworm, roundworm, etc., which are inside the body of the host, those are endoparasite. Then the next slide you have of saprophytic nutrition. You can see the bread mold, you can see the yeast, molds and mushrooms. So these are actually the saprophytes. Now we come to the next type of nutrition, that is holozoic nutrition. Holozoic nutrition is feeding on solid food. Solid food can either be of plant product or it can be an animal product. In holozoic mode of nutrition, food enters into your body through the mouth. And that process is called as ingestion. Then this ingested food is further broken down into simpler process by means of digestion. And finally, the digested food is absorbed by the living organism. That is holozoic mode of nutrition, and this is the type of nutrition which we human beings follow. We saw the different types of nutrition. Now we are going to see nutrition in plants. Now we are going to see nutrition in plants. As you all know, students, all green plants prepare their own food in the presence of sunlight, carbon dioxide, water, and the chlorophyll that is present in their cell, in their leaves actually. They are present in the leaves, and the entire process is known as photosynthesis. The entire process is known as photosynthesis. If you sum up this in the form of an equation, it is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus 12 molecules of water in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight. Sunlight, it gives, this is a carbohydrate. Then you have 6 molecules of water and 6 molecules of oxygen. So, what is photosynthesis actually? Photosynthesis is a process adopted by the green plants wherein the green plants prepare their own food utilizing carbon dioxide, chlorophyll from their leaves in the presence of sunlight, and they even use water as one of the raw materials, and the byproduct, or you can say the product that is obtained, is carbohydrate along with oxygen, and this is the oxygen which we breathe. So now students, what are the basic raw materials and from where do they get these raw materials? To start with, the first raw material is sunlight. Sunlight. Sunlight is the source of energy, and this you get it from the sun. Second is carbon dioxide. Where do they get the carbon dioxide from? They get the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Atmosphere they get it, but from where? Okay, fine, they get it from the atmosphere, but how do they get it actually? The leaves of the plants have tiny pores present in the underneath surface, under surface of the leaves, which are known as stomata. These stomata actually takes in carbon dioxide during the day, and as a result of which photosynthesis takes place. What will happen if the stomata remains open every time? Means every time if the plant keeps its stomata open, what will happen? If that is the case, the plant will lose a huge amount of water by the process of transpiration, which is not advisable for the plant. So that is why stomata opens only during the day, so that it can absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, so that the photosynthesis process can take place. Now let's see the view of a stomata. This is the stomata. Bean-shaped structure. These two are the guard cells. This is the stoma, or you can call it a stomatal pore. These are the subsidiary cells. It is the and these are the chloroplasts. Now, it is the guard cell actually which regulates the opening and closing of the stomata. Now, when the water enters it into the guard cell, it bulges out, thereby opening the stomatal pore. But when it loses the water, the stomatal pore closes. It becomes flaccid. It is somewhat like this. It closes so that no more exchange of gases can take place. So this is the structure of stomata. A stomata with the opened stomatal pore, and this one is a closed stomata with the closed stomatal pore. Now let's discuss about the various events that take place during the photosynthesis. For this we'll need the equation once again. Once again we'll need this equation, that is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus 12 molecules of water in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight gives C6H12O6. This is a carbohydrate, 6 molecules of water and 6 molecules of oxygen and 6 molecules of water. Yeah, students, we saw nutrition in plants, and nutrition in plants means plants obtain nutrition by the process of photosynthesis. There are certain steps to be followed during the time of photosynthesis. What are those actually? Like the first step is absorption of sunlight. Sunlight is absorbed by the chlorophyll. That is the first step, absorption of sunlight by chlorophyll. Then the second one is the conversion of this solar energy or the light energy, conversion of this light energy into chemical energy. What was the first step? Like absorption of the light energy by chlorophyll. Then the second step is conversion of the light energy into chemical energy, and also followed by the splitting of water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. And the third step is the reduction of carbon dioxide into carbohydrate. Now let me tell you one thing, students, all these events don't take place simultaneously one after the other in all the plants. Just because in the case of desert plant, the desert plants actually absorb carbon dioxide during the night. They don't open their stomata during the day. Rather, they open the stomata at night and they absorb carbon dioxide and they form an intermediate compound. And this intermediate compound is acted upon by the energy absorbed by the chlorophyll during the day. So, and why do you think so that the desert plants actually like open their stomata at night? You know, the desertic plant actually, they live in a condition where there is water scarcity. And if they open their stomata during the daytime, lots and lots of water will be lost from their body as a result of transpiration. So to avoid that, they do this activity at night. Now the next step is nutrition in the plants. We have seen nutrition in unicellular organisms. Now we'll see nutrition in the unicellular organisms. Unicellular organism like amoeba. Now let's see nutrition in amoeba. What is amoeba? Amoeba is an organism. It's a small organism, microscopic organism actually. This amoeba, it is aquatic. Like this amoeba feeds upon the small microscopic plants and animals that floats in water. Amoeba, when it sees food, what exactly it does? It uses its body extension, finger-like extension, to engulf the food. And this finger-like extension is known as pseudopodia. Pseudopodia, it is the false feet, pseudopodia. So once when they engulf this, they form the food vacuole, and inside the food vacuole, the complex food material is broken down into simpler ones which diffuses into the cytoplasm, and the remaining undigested materials are ejected out of the cell structure through the cell surface. So this is the nutrition in amoeba. Now let's see nutrition in human beings. So stop kariye. Now let's see, students, nutrition in human beings. What is actually nutrition in human being? The nutrition in the human beings takes place with the human digestive system. This is a rough structure of nutrition, like human digestive system. If you see, the human digestive system consists of an alimentary canal which extends right from the mouth till the anus. This is the anus. So it is a long structure actually. In an adult, human adult, the length of this alimentary canal is about 9 meters. You can imagine the length. In the case of an adult, it is around 9 meters. And if you see the associated organs, you will see here the mouth, then you have the food pipe or the esophagus, you have the stomach, You have the, you have this large intestine, you have the small intestine. Along with it, you have certain associated glands. One of the gland is this liver, the other gland is the pancreas, and in the mouth you have the salivary gland. Now students, the process of nutrition in human beings actually consists of 5 steps. First one is ingestion. Then you have digestion. Then you have absorption. You have assimilation. And lastly, egestion or excretion. Egestion, defecation. Now, when you take in food, the process of taking in food into your mouth is called as ingestion. It's a small step actually. You just take in food, that is called ingestion, and this you do by means of your mouth. Then the next step is digestion. What is digestion? Digestion is actually breaking down the complex food material into simpler ones so that it can be readily used by the body. This is a very vast process and it involves a lot of organs in it. Now, digestion actually, in the human beings, the digestion starts right in the mouth itself. If you see this diagram, just see the mouth. The mouth has teeth, it has a tongue, it also has salivary glands. Now what exactly happened? The teeth, the moment you take in food, the teeth starts biting the food into smaller particles, and it even chews it and grinds it. And the salivary gland which is present inside your mouth secretes saliva. Now the role of the saliva is to moisten the food so that it can easily pass through the esophagus. And the role of the tongue is to mix the saliva with the food particle, the food that was chewed by the teeth. Now this particular food passes from the mouth to the esophagus or the food pipe. The lining of the esophagus have certain muscles which contracts and relaxes rhythmically, and this enables the food to be pushed further into the stomach. And this contraction and relaxation of muscles in the in the food pipe is known as peristaltic movement. Peristaltic. Now, this peristaltic movement pushes the food from the esophagus to the stomach. Inside the stomach actually, the food is churned for about 3 hours. For 3 hours the food is churned, and during this time the food is further broken down into simpler molecules. The walls of the stomach have 3 tubular glands actually, and those glands secretes a juice called gastric juice. Once again I repeat, the walls of the stomach have 3 tubular glands which secretes a juice called gastric juice, and this gastric juice further has 3 components in it. One is HCl, the other one is mucus, and the third one is enzyme pepsin. Now, what do you think should be the role of the HCl? Actually, HCl makes the food medium into acidic. And when it makes it acidic, the enzyme pepsin gets activated, and it acts upon the food to break down the protein present in the food. So HCl has got also one more role, that is it kills the bacteria or the microbes which has entered into our body by means of the food. If in case it has entered, the HCl kills that. So there are 2 roles of HCl. One, killing of the microbes if it has entered through the food, and secondly it activates the enzyme pepsin, because it actually activates an acidic medium in which the enzyme pepsin can further break down the protein present in the food. I forgot to mention here actually what is the role of saliva. Saliva secretes an enzyme called salivary amylase. Saliva secretes an enzyme called salivary amylase which breaks down the starch present in the food into sugar, and this is taking place inside the mouth, and that is why I said the digestion first begins from the mouth itself. Here actually the starch that is present in the food breaks down into sugar by the activity of salivary amylase, and this is secreted by saliva. And once when this food enters here, it is churned, it becomes more smooth and a semi-solid paste-like structure which is called as a chyme. Then the glands present here secretes gastric juice. The gastric juice further has three components. One is HCl, the mucus and the pepsin. So I told you the role of the pepsin and I told you the role of HCl. What about mucus? Mucus actually protects the inner surface of the inner lining of the stomach from the action of HCl. Now my question to you students is that just tell me what will happen if mucus is not secreted in your body. If suppose mucus is not secreted in your body, then the HCl will cause erosion of the stomach, inner lining of the stomach, and it will cause ulcers. It will cause ulcers. So that is why mucus plays a very important role. It is protecting the inner lining of the stomach from the activities of HCl. Now this acidic, partially digested acidic food goes to the small intestine. It goes to the small intestine. Though we call it as a small intestine, it is not small at all. It is the longest part of the alimentary canal, and it is about 6.5 meter long in the case of an adult human being. This small intestine actually varies from organisms to organisms. For example, and depending upon the food they eat actually. For example, let's take the example of herbivorous animals. Herbivorous animals like cow, goat, zebra, etc. You know they feed upon the plant products, and plants are a rich source of cellulose. You know cellulose takes time to get digested. So these organisms, the herbivorous animals actually have a long small intestine when compared to the carnivorous animals. Carnivorous animals like lion and tiger, they feed upon meat. Meat is easily digested, and therefore carnivores have a smaller intestine. Intestine gets secretion from two glands. One is liver and the pancreas. Just see here. In the intestine, two secretions are received from liver and the pancreas. Now, what is the role of the liver? Just see. Liver secretes bile juice. Liver secretes the bile juice which is stored in the gallbladder. This bile juice actually helps in breaking down the fat components present in the food into smaller molecules. And the bile juice also plays a very important role because it is making the food into an alkaline medium. Earlier the food which came from the stomach was acidic in nature. Now the bile juice is converting into alkaline medium. And why is it so? Because the enzymes, the pancreatic juice, the enzymes, the pancreatic juice and the intestinal juice actually, which I will be talking about, they can act upon the food if it is only in alkaline medium. If it is acidic, it won't get activated and it won't act upon it. So the bile plays a very important role in making the medium alkaline, and this alkaline nature of the food further enhances the activities of the pancreatic juice as well as the intestinal juice. Now in the small intestine, the inner wall of the small intestine actually have certain glands which secretes the intestinal juice. And the pancreas secretes the pancreatic juice. The pancreas secretes the pancreatic juice which contains enzyme trypsin and lipase. And these two enzymes plays a very important role in breaking down the fat and protein. And this intestinal juice plays a very important role in completing the digestion of carbohydrate into this intestinal juice plays a very important role in completing the digestion process of carbohydrate into a glucose, protein into amino acids, and fats into fatty acids and glycerol. Once again students, the starch present in the food is converted into sugar. Then the carbohydrate is converted into glucose. Fat is converted into glycerol and fatty acid, whereas protein is converted into amino acid. These are the end products of digestion actually of these particular nutrients. Now, the inner wall of the small intestine is here actually. The inner wall of the small intestine have a lot of finger-like projection. Just see the picture. It has a number of finger-like projection, and these finger-like projection increases the surface area of absorption for the digested food. And they are also richly supplied with the blood. So this is all about digestion. This is all about digestion. We have seen ingestion, we have seen digestion. Now the remaining topics are very simple. Then we come to absorption. In the case of absorption, what exactly is done? The food after digestion, it becomes very small, and now they can pass through the walls of the small intestine into the blood. And this is the site, small intestine is the main site where the food is absorbed, the digested food is absorbed. Now, this is all about absorption. Then we come to assimilation. The blood takes the food, the dissolved food and the digested food to different parts of the cell of the body, and the assimilated food, the cell of the body takes energy from the assimilated food and carry out various life activities, and this energy is needed for the growth of an organism and for the repair of the damaged cells and tissues. Now, after assimilation, this particular food, the undigested food, passes on to the large intestine. This is the large intestine, a broader tube. Once when the food passes to the large intestine, the walls of the large intestine starts absorbing the water from the digested food, and as a result of which the food becomes solid in nature. Then the last part of the large intestine is known as rectum. Here actually the undigested food is accumulated for a short time, and when you go to the toilet, the undigested food is expelled out of your body through the anus in the form of stool or feces, and this process of expelling the feces or the stool from the body is known as egestion. So once again student, just see nutrition in human beings. The first step was ingestion, that is just taking in of food. Digestion was breaking down the food into simpler molecules. We saw it started right from the stomach, then it came to the, started from the mouth, it came to the stomach. In the stomach actually, it got digested, it used certain like enzymes like pepsin, HCl, mucus, etc. And then from the stomach it went to the intestine. In the intestine also it got secretion from the liver and the pancreas. Further digestion took place, and the entire digestion took place here. The digestion got completed in the small intestine itself, and absorption also started here. And absorption, it's like the entire absorption process took place in the small intestine, and then the undigested food passed on to the large intestine, from where it was stored in the rectum for some time, and finally it got ejaculated from the anus by the process of egestion or defecation. So this is all about nutrition in human beings. I hope this particular part is very clear. Now if it this is clear, now in the next class actually we are going to do respiration. This is all about nutrition. The next life process which we are going to deal is with respiration. So be prepared, just go through this topic. Then in the next chapter I'll just give a small brief. I'll be briefing about this, and then I'll be proceeding to respiration. Thank you students.